strategy and the challenges that e-commerce brings to that. Thank you. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about one of the major changes at the moment in our industry, which is about the move from print to digital, particularly in the HE market, and how we've had to innovate in that area. So, and if I can do all that in 12 minutes, it'll be a minor miracle. Right, background. So you probably know we're a family-owned business. Toby Blackwell is still our lifelong president. We've been around a long time, as you can read from the slide, and both our flagship shop and our offices are based at 50 Broad Street in Oxford. Most people would know us as an academic, professional and specialist bookseller, and we're a business in turnaround. And we've been in turnaround for quite a long time, but what that's really meant is that we've had to close a number of sort of loss-making elements of Blackwell's. We used to be a global library supplier, and in terms of closing those things, as we've closed them, what that's meant is that we've reduced our losses, so we've been able to really reinvest in the business and move forward. So that's what we've been doing, making significant reinvestments in the last few years. Most of you will know, anybody that reads the Oxford Mail, I would imagine, would know, the long-term future of the business is to be managed under an employee partnership. So the whole of Blackwell's will be owned in trust equally by all of the booksellers. It will no longer be owned by Toby. What you may not know, we have 31 full-time trading shops, Aberdeen to Exeter, Belfast to Canterbury, and also 34 part-time trading connect shops, as we call them, pop-up shops. And those shops really are in universities where there isn't the economics to support a year-round full-time trading bookshop. And we serve pretty much 55 of the UK's higher education institutions with a physical presence. Heifers in Cambridge is part of the Blackwell's portfolio of shops. I hope there's nobody here from Cambridge, but obviously when Blackwell's took over Cambridge, rebranding a Cambridge brand as Oxford probably wouldn't have been the wisest thing to do, so we didn't do it. And in terms of innovation, we were the first transactional book site, at the very least in the UK, in terms of Blackwell Online. We launched that in 1995, so it's over 20 years old now as a transactional bookshop. And a year or so ago, 18 months or so ago as well, we launched something called Blackwell Learning, which is our digital textbook platform. That is the only digital textbook platform built in the UK. All of our competitors are in Silicon Valley. So again, in terms of doing things in the UK, we built that ourselves, and we have our own dedicated digital development team down in London. Alongside our cash business, we have a very successful corporate sales business. Sales ratio between what goes through the tills and what goes through on invoice on the corporate business is a ratio of about 5 to 3. We are the exclusive supplier to the MOD, but also the NHS, universities, etc., etc. Very diverse portfolio. Museum shops, as in Welcome, Royal Bank of Scotland. Anybody who flies up to Edinburgh will see there's a big Royal Bank of Scotland building there. In Gogarburn, we have shops in there. Art and Poster, Rare Books. And all of our shops actually have a stock holding which is predicated on their local buying and their local university. And we have to do that because if you study business economics at Nottingham Trent and you study business at Nottingham University, they're completely different books. So we can't buy what we buy locally. We have proper booksellers who buy on the ground. And we have a very small support function team which sits above Broad Street, of which I'm a part. Our belief is actually that our job is to make sure that we facilitate training and coaching our managers and our booksellers to develop their own strategies. You know, our job is to support them. And it seems to work. 4 of our managers have won the industry award for best manager in the industry in the past few years, and also we're down again for this year on May the 9th, so hopefully I'll be able to make that 5 out of 6 next year. Things, again, you might not know about is 12% of our cash sales, even though we're an academic bookseller, is fiction. 9% is actually children's. We've also invested heavily in the past few years in e-procurement solutions, which means that if you're in the corporate business, actually end-to-end ordering and invoicing, which doesn't involve any paper or anything like that, we're heavily involved in e-procurement solutions as part of their workflow. Also, one of the trends in HE in the last few years, particularly since the introduction of tuition fees, has been around HE institutions buying books for students via either smart cards or bursary schemes or whatever it is. So we're heavily involved in that. In terms of Broad Street itself, should any of you ever go down Broad Street, the Norrington Room, which is our subterranean academic basement in Oxford, celebrates its 50th year this year, is excavated under the grounds of Trinity College, who are a very generous landlord. It's the largest single book-selling room in Europe. It's 2.5 miles of books down there. If you've never been there, you should go. And on the way down is Edward Monckton's last work, which is a 25-foot fresco. That's on permanent public display in Broad Street. Most expensive book we sold this year, it cost £60,000. It wasn't actually a book, it was a map from Tolkien, which had previously been undiscovered. And the most expensive book in the shop, should you have £85,000, is a 4th folio of Shakespeare's collected works from 1685. should anybody have the money. So we are the only UK bookseller actually who plays in all channels. So as it says there, online, offline, new, second-hand, rare, antiquarian, academic, general, music, print, digital, B2C, B2B, HE, FE, schools, corporate. The full 9 yards. Most booksellers specialise in certain areas. So it brings challenges. And one of the challenges, because we are adamant that actually our strategy should be developed locally, is that we challenge our managers to build a compelling customer proposition which is unique to their individual market. As many of you will know Broad Street, I'll talk about Broad Street. Specifically, that is about building brand loyalty through outstanding service. And that's not just at the till point, that's across the business. If you think about it from a retail side of things, it is probably more important how we deal with refunds and how we deal with sales. So, you know, in terms of outstanding service, it has to be across everything. Range, differentiating the offer. If you come into Broad Street, that range needs to be very different from what you'll see in Waterstones, in Core Market, in Smiths, in an independent. And we deliberately showcase the expertise of our booksellers. They are proper booksellers. They buy the books themselves. If you go into Broad Street and you read on the ticket that we love a particular fiction book, it's because we've read it and we love it, not because we've been paid money to say it. And that's, you know, that's why we believe that we're different. Events and partnerships I'll talk a little bit more about in a second or two, but this really is about putting the bookshop at the heart of the local community. This is the marquee at the Oxford Literary Festival, which finished last week, but we do over 250 events a year. So in terms of innovating, in terms of doing things with the bookshop, it's far more than just a bookshop. Author talks, book launches, all of the stuff you can read there. And that doesn't actually include the Oxford Literary Festival, which is 300 events in one, and we bookstall every single one of those. So this is a massive operation. You know, we source that marquee and generators and liaise with the council and all the other things that we do there, which is an interesting learning curve for booksellers who came into the sleepy world to, you know, talk about their favourite fiction titles. And it's very diverse. Look, you know, from David Attenborough to John Lydon, often in the same week. Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. In July, we are showing David Bowie's last concert in the Norrington Room. Also in the Norrington Room, again, being more than just a bookshop, for the past 5 or 6 years, we have put on creation theatre events. So that picture of King Lear, which finished in March, is actually in the middle of that floor that you can see on the left-hand side or the right-hand side of that floor. So again, using the bookshop to be very creative, to build that compelling proposition. Partnerships are massively important to us. You'll recognise most of you Richard Ovenden from the Bodleian Library, who are our friends and next-door neighbours, and we have very strong relationships, obviously, across the university, but with the Bodleian, also with the Ashmolean. We worked on them with the Blake Festival and things like that. That is a Velociraptor going into our shop to sort of co-promote the National History Museum and ourselves. So, again, just being far more than just a bookshop to keep customers coming back and keep them interested in what we do. So that's kind of what we do. The challenge for us on that front is that for many, many years, building that sort of compelling customer proposition at a local level was enough. Actually, as far as I'm concerned, retail has kind of moved, particularly actually in the last sort of 2 or 3 years with Amazon Prime, with expectations driven around online in terms of price, speed, availability, you know, that kind of full breadth of services. In terms of where we are as a business and where the challenge will be is kind of, you know, taking what we do locally, but also then meeting customers' expectations now around, you know, what their expectations are around online speed, availability and value. You know, in Broad Street, actually, there's more than 200,000 titles. That's kind of Manchester. But, you know, in Broad Street, if we've got 400,000 titles in there, but online you could get 12 million the next day, possibly even the same day, our challenge is to get, you know, our booksellers and our customers to understand, you know, that compelling proposition. You know, so do we now have 31 shops, or actually do we have 31 fulfillment centres for 12 million titles, for click and collects and all the other things that we need to do? And I think from a bookselling side of things, if we can marry those two things, the innovation that we have in terms of what goes on in the shop, you know, alongside everything to do with, you know, logistics and service on that side of things, then I think that is where we'll be truly successful. And I think that's the challenge for all booksellers moving forwards. So that's one thing I was going to talk about. The other thing is the nature of HE in 2 minutes. I talked very briefly earlier. We built this digital platform, Blackwell Learning, built it down in Shoreditch, move it to Waterloo now in terms of where the people are because it's cheaper, frankly. But digital textbook platform built in the UK. With this, you can highlight, copy, paste, do all of the things you would expect. You can have the book read aloud to you from an accessibility viewpoint and all the rest of it. We've just done a small trial this Saeed, actually, on them buying some books on this platform. But this is kind of a real battleground at the moment for business. So if you think about digital, most people in this room will think about probably Kindle in the fiction market, you know, and the move in sort of 2012 onwards from print to digital on that. Kindle is a proprietary device. It's a locked ecosystem, which means, you know, classic vertical supply chain. If you bought a Kindle e-reader, you can only buy from Kindle. And a lot of people don't realise that. We partnered with somebody called Nook. Smith's partnered with Kobo, Sony. But the reality of it is that market was already gone. And there isn't a bookseller in the UK who is actively in the digital space in terms of fiction book sales. Not a single bookseller influencing, you know, sales or what is going on there in a real fashion. 90% of that market is Kindle. So that's where we are. Now, in higher education, it was slower to migrate. And the reason for that is a simple one. If you're a medical student and you've got a black and white e-reader, then Tutor and Grabowski on Anatomy and Physiology is neither use nor ornament to you on that device. So actually, it was slower to migrate in many respects because it was device-led. But in the tablet generation, we now find ourselves really in that digital disruption wave. And it's an interesting market for us because historically, you know, student purchases, it was a B2C market. You know, but now, actually, this is universities making the decision to buy the books for the students, so this is a B2B market. And it's not the end user who is making the decision to buy the books, it's the institution. So students actually, when we ask them, and we do ask them, are still very much of a mind that they want print. But, you know, clearly, in terms of the universities, they are buying digital. So it's a completely different market for us. It's got new entrants. There are pure play platforms like VitalSource and CourseSmart, and also the publishers selling direct, which means that, you know, it's a little bit kind of Wild West out there at the moment. And we've gone from being something that was actually quite a stable, sleepy market to something that's now very competitive, B2B market, you know, high volumes, low margins. And like I say, it's impossible to know where it will play out. Our challenge is to make sure, like any new businesses, that we're not on the wrong side of that line. 12 minutes 30. 30 seconds over.